Steve West and Matt Nicholson with producer John Myers.
Yeah, the gang's all here trying to deal with fantastic technical situations in the background, but we'll get it all figured out and plug along through here, whether you're checking us out on the flagship or radio station or on CRN Live on YouTube. Matt and I in studio, producer John via computer on CRN Live on YouTube. Got a big change regarding the Truck Series season opener. We'll talk about that. Got good news for television as the Cup season gets underway. Major change at the top of Formula E, and this is in the middle of the season, so this is why it catches us a little bit by surprise. Could NASCAR be going outside of the France family for a little bit of an investment? We'll talk about that coming up as well. Plus, don't mess with the Schumacher family. We found that out in a German court this week, and we got more changes at the upper levels of Indycar. Folks, that's just a few things. Tip of the iceberg, so to speak, if you will, of all the things that we're going to deal with on this week's edition of CRN.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. More racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome into the show. Steve West, Matt Nicholson in studio, producer John producing via remote from a computer that is just giving him fits, but he says he'll work his way through it, so we trust him. All right, let's get into it because it's going to be a busy show today here, and let's start off with everything that's happened so far leading up to this week, or this weekend, I should say. Wednesday evening, front row qualifying for the Daytona 500, where we also learned of the two drivers who were going to get in on qualifying speed. Fastest time of both rounds belonged to, kind of a surprise, a Toyota. It's traditionally, since joining NASCAR, they haven't really qualified that well at either Daytona or Talladega. But in this case, Chase Briscoe, behind the wheel of the number 19, his new ride for this year, he and his team created a rocket, and he parked it on the pole. Toyota's first Daytona 500 pole in their history, 49.249 seconds, besting Austin Cindric's second best time in his Team Penske Ford. He was 0.076 of a second back. So there's your front row, Chase Briscoe, Austin Cindric. Again, that's locked in. Unless, of course, they have to make major changes to the car sometime before we drop the green flag on the Daytona 500. And, of course, that was the main purpose behind Wednesday's qualifying. But the secondary story was, of course, dealing with the 9 open cars that are vying for one of 4 or maybe 5 open starting positions for tomorrow's race. And 2 drivers who got in on speed are, well, they're no strangers to fans. Let's face it. Or really for Daytona 500s. Producer John's favorite driver, Martin Truex Jr. is in, and 7-timer himself, Jimmy Johnson. They were able to pull fast enough laps during qualifying to lock themselves into the race. Their starting position got set during the Thursday evening duels. Speaking of which, the dual races completed the lineups. Race number 1, the 23-11 pairing of Championship 4 member Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace ended up leading the pack. Final push by Reddick allowed Wallace to claim the win. That means he'll start on the inside of row number 2 on Sunday. Second part of the dual race was, well, who else was going to get in the race? Turned out to be Justin Allgaier in the Junior Motorsports entry. Used a charge in the final couple of laps to put himself in that position. Wallace first, William Byron second, Ty Dillon, Ross Chastain, then Reddick, A.J. Allmendinger, Austin Dillon, Chase Elliott, Allgaier inside the top 10 in 9th, and Kyle Busch 10th. Ilio Castroneves was in the first duel as well, but he got involved in a crash 13 laps in, so he uses the provisional. And that means that we will have 41 starters tomorrow for the Daytona 500. Dual race number 2, cautions were, well, flying pretty freely. And when all was said and done, Daytona 500 champion was standing in victory lane. It was Austin Cindric who stayed out of trouble and got the win, just besting Eric Jones with help from his Team Penske teammate and defending Cup Series champion Joey Logano. But desperation set in further back in the field. It was kind of a mess, truth be told. Cindric wins, Jones, Chris Buescher, Denny Hamlin, Logano fades to 5th. Corey LaJoie 6th, races his way into the Daytona 500 in a little bit of a surprise. Todd Gilliland, Ryan Blaney, Jonathan Nemechek, and Christopher Bell. So the drivers without charters who will race, Castroneves, he'll start 41st. We just mentioned that. He gets the provisional. We mentioned Jimmy Johnson and Martin Truex Jr. They start 40th and 39th, respectively. Based on their finishes in the duels, Justin Allgaier starts 19th. Corey LaJoie rolls off 12th. We knew that there were going to be big names that were going to be sitting on the outside looking in. These are the drivers that, well, hang their head in shame, if you will. Not necessarily going home. Their cars do. Anthony Alfredo's Beard Motorsports, number 62. Chandler Smith in the garage, 66, number 66.
Check.
BJ McLeod in the number 78 Live Fast Motorsports ride.
Check.
JJ Yaley in the NY Racing Team's number 44.
Check.
Those were ones that we kind of figured. The Beard Motorsports one is a little bit of a surprise only because of how well they tend to do, because they concentrate so much on Daytona, Talladega, and this year Atlanta.
Yeah, they were in position to do so until somebody decided to push in a straight line off center and caused chaos. So, yeah, that happens, and it should be 91 car going home too.
Yeah, probably should.
No, there's not a problem. It should be.
Yeah, I mean, again, we can sit here and talk about that OEP, the provisional. We can talk about it all day, but we've already talked about it, and, well, there's your rule, so there's not much we can do about it.
I watched the qualifying lap, and I'm sorry. IndyCar driver, Elio's one heck of an IndyCar driver.
Sure.
But until you tell me otherwise, I think he botched that qualifying lap on purpose.
That's an interesting theory.
Because you cannot tell me why all the other 3 Trackhouse cars were almost dead equal in speed.
And somehow he's
at
a
50.3 and the other one's in the mid 49s. Please give me a break.
Yep. All right. Yesterday, middle part of the day, Formula E got race number 1 of the Jeddah weekend in, I should say. we'll deal with all the points and everything next week because they got another race coming up later today. In the end, your pole sitter was your winner. Max Gunther in his DS Penske claims the win, trailed by Oliver Rowland in the Nissan Formula E team ride. And the rookie, Taylor Barnard, puts his McLaren up into third place. Nick DeVries in his Mahindra in fourth. Jake Hughes in his Maserati fifth. Jean-Eric Verne finishes sixth, trailed by Eduardo Mortara, Sam Bird, Antonio Felix da Costa, and Stoffel Van Dorn. There is the Formula E race number 1. Again, race number 2 coming up later today. Last night, though, we got to get into the beginnings of the 2025 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series season. And with the details, I'm going to turn it over to Matt. But first things first, if you turned off the TV or the radio right after the checkered flag was shown and you got the rundown of the initial top 10, you're waking up this morning to a new world, right?
That you are. Because apparently we still have no transparency of what caused this.
Yeah.
There's none. Parker Kligerman, was, and it's declared Parker Kligerman is the winner after somebody decided to have a hair trigger caution thumb again.
Yes.
For the 923rd time.
Tell me why on a 2.5 mile long track, as the field wrecks going into turn 3, are we showing a caution flag on that final lap? You can't tell me that these drivers at this level can't figure enough to slow down by the time they get onto the backstretch.
That wasn't going to be that wasn't the caution that actually got through for. The secondary wreck where the field wadded up in 3 and 4 because Chandler Smith decided to shove everybody around and turn trucks, apparently. That's where the caution was thrown in at. And I asked this question in 2022 to a specific official that we know really well, standing on the platform in between the elevator and between the scoring tower, our scoring tower.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to call our scoring tower, because we were the first people to set foot in said scoring tower.
True.
Do you actually legitimately think when the rag is in the air and you see it, do you legitimately think anybody is going to break that pedal off of the firewall?
No.
His response? Heck no. In a different form, in a nice form.
Yeah, that's paraphrased.
That's paraphrasing it.
It's not a direct quote.
Do you seriously think anybody's going to lift off the gas looking at the rag in the air?
Nope.
No. So why are we... Because truck made an impact. It's a super speedway.
Yeah.
You're going to hit hard no matter where you hit. Chandler Smith caved in the safer barrier to the concrete in the duels.
Yeah.
That I almost called the 125s again.
It's tempting,
He
isn't
caved it in. That's a legitimate throw of a caution.
Sure.
But when you're coming to the line and you know for a fact nobody's going, and you think, oh, we got to lift, make sure nobody gets hit. Somebody's going to take the front clip off of a vehicle because they aren't lifting because, hey, I see the flag. Pay windows open.
Yeah.
We're going.
Yeah, exactly. I don't get it. Again, if that wreck happens in turn 1, I understand that. You certainly want to throw the caution flag there.
Turn 1 to turn 2, yes. But when you enter,
when you're going into turn 3,
when you, in my opinion, if you enter the midpoint of 3 and 4, all bets are off.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at the other end of the back straight going into turn 3, because you've got the entirety of that run at Daytona, especially from the middle of the tri-oval all the way down that short chute down to turns 1 and 2 and most of the backstretch.
Right.
You've got all that time to slow down. You can't tell me that these guys hit that checkered flag and they can't slow down by that point in time.
Exactly.
Horse pucky.
The brakes of the super speedway are not that big, people.
Yeah.
You're not going to stop that quick.
No. It's yikes. Let's see. Where else do we want to go here? So
Corey Heim declared the winner.
Corey Heim's
Parker
declared.
Kligerman
There you go.
disqualified.
Yeah.
Because truck was a fraction too low, apparently. Tell me how it was too low. Did the shock settle? Did the shock bleed off?
Yeah.
Did the spring collapse?
Yeah. I mean,
They just don't fall that easy.
You're taking that win away from him. And he's in a part-time role. This is the second time he's had a win ripped away from him in 2 races? The last 2 races, because he was, when you throw back to last year in the Charlotte Roval.
He had the Xfinity race one.
That's just.
But you had a
nuts.
you had a Tricon 1-2 finish with Corey Heim winning, declared the winner. Gio Rosero second. I wonder if I said something about that.
Check out this week's cross flags.
Recently.
Yeah. Check out this week's cross flags.
Ty Majeski third, Granting Finger fourth, Justin Haley fifth, Chandler Smith sixth, Daniel Hemrick seventh, Jason White eighth in a Rayom truck, William Sawalich ninth, and Frankie Muniz with his first top 10 in his first full-time season.
Well, there you go. So from what we saw Wednesday through to yesterday, we'll get into what happens this weekend. We head back overseas, the Jeddah circuit in Diriyah, Saudi Arabia. Second race of the Jeddah E-Prix doubleheader weekend, airing, we think, on CBS or CBS Sports Network somewhere at some point in time. Don't know. Can't find it. Actual race starts at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central. NASCAR continues their season opening weekend, begins with the ARCA Menard Series running the Ride the Chili's Dente 200. Fox starts at about the same time as Formula E, noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central Time. Actual green flag might put one faster than the other. We went with Formula E because they're likely to hit the checkers quicker. From ARCA to the Xfinity Series season opener, you get the United Rentals 300. That'll air on the CW and MRN Radio starting at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central Time. And then the biggin tomorrow, Great American Race, Daytona 500, the kickoff to the Cup Series season. Gets underway on Fox and MRN Radio. Was supposed to start at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Central Time. Supposed to. By the way, quick reminder to our longtime listeners, but a good note for our new listeners because we're getting them all the time. Those times that we mention, they're race coverage times, not pre-race because radio and TV tend to be different. But wait, Friday, and I'll give NASCAR credit for this because they didn't wait until the last possible second to make the announcement. 48 hours ahead of time, they announced because of two uncertainties in life or death and taxes, but let's face it, anytime there's a race at Daytona, weather seems to be right up there as a third certainty too. So because of weather and because of the fact that President Donald Trump is attending his second big sporting event in 2 weeks, last week he was at the Super Bowl, this week he's at the Super Bowl of stock car racing. He'll be at the Daytona 500. They decided to move it up by an hour. They had to do it well in advance. You have to do it at least 24 hours in advance because of television. But they did it 48 hours in advance, so now it's up an hour to 1:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Central Time. Mark your calendars. That's your new time. Yep. All right. Next up, big news. NASCAR's been the France family ever since it started. Could that be changing? A report from the Sports Business Journal says that it is a possibility. Plus, we may end up talking to a couple of people that are down in Daytona. We'll get details on that here in just a couple of minutes. We're just underway right here on this, the opening weekend of NASCAR edition of CRN.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. 2 tires only, and back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back in. Programming change today. We just found out our show's been cut in half. Our home office, where we're broadcasting this show from, has informed us that Daytona coverage starts at 9 o'clock Central Time. So we're going to hop, skip, and jump around here as much as we can and see what we can get into. First things first, though, this is huge news, comes from the world of NASCAR. Sports Business Journal reporting NASCAR might be looking for outside investment in the series. Series started by Big Bill France back in 1948. Let's face it, it's been owned by the France family ever since, right? Currently in the hands of Jim France and Lisa France Kennedy. When Brian France stepped down back in 2018 as the CEO, the day-to-day operations seemed to really fall more to Steve Phelps, NASCAR's president. And since then, he's been working on things. Some things have worked, others not so much. Some of the scheduling has worked, bringing back the likes of North Wilkesboro and Bowman Gray Stadium, Rockingham pending. We'll see how good the people do when it comes to turning out for that. LA Coliseum, a little bit more miss than a hit. Chicago Street Course has actually proven popular in attendance and TV ratings, but the relationship with the city of Chicago itself, yeah, it's less than stable. But then again, Chicago's less than stable, so natural. For reasons really not 100% revealed, Phelps seems determined, by the way, to take NASCAR outside of the U.S. We do have the race in Mexico City coming this year, talk of heading to South America. Due to that, a desire to expand on a global basis, teams are kind of looking at it. Phelps said it makes sense for NASCAR to look into it too. Outside investors. Of note, Liberty Media. Think about this for a second. Liberty Media has the commercial rights to Formula One, and they're based right here in the United States, but they might be looking to expand their involvement in motorsports. They were in on IndyCar up until the point where Penske Entertainment bought it out.
When I saw this breakout, this was the first company I thought did come to mind. Liberty Media.
Yeah.
First one came to mind.
Is it a good thing? Is it a great thing? I don't know. But I'll be real honest with you. You and I have questioned a lot of the things that have come out of NASCAR over the last, 4, 5, 6 years? Right about the time when Brian France stepped down.
Right.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense now suddenly, doesn't it? Then there's the news that the proposed Honda-Nissan merger appears to be over and done. No Valentine's cards, no Christmas dinners. Please lose my phone number. NASCAR President Steve Phelps told media Tuesday in Daytona he's still confident that a fourth car brand is set to come to NASCAR and do it soon. Phelps said this, quote, "We're having robust discussions with a number of original equipment partners that someday, if I had to guess, and were a betting man, something is going to hit."
Right.
It's kind of like throwing a dart at the dartboard in the dark, isn't it?
Pretty much.
You know, chances are sooner or later you're actually going to hit the dartboard. Yeah. Phelps continued on, quote, "I just don't know with whom or the timing of it. I know that that's an answer I've been giving repeatedly over the past 5 years, but they are the facts. There is no BS in the comment I just made." Okay, yeah, well, at this point in time, I'm beginning to be of the mindset of I'll see it when I believe it, and I'll believe it when I see it. Biggest hurdle, Phelps admitted, is that car makers that had them are currently kind of dropping V8 engines, and that, let's face it, that's what the top levels of NASCAR uses. And to create them, if they never had them in the first place, is not an inexpensive venture. Motorsports insiders believe that any automaker coming in that doesn't have a V8 in their stable is likely looking at an investment just to get into NASCAR of at least $100 million, I should say, at a minimum. And that's just to create the engine. All right. We'll see. And then there's something that Chevrolet did, and I want to mention this right here because I want to make it perfectly clear that you got a whole lot of people that are being overreactive to this. And that's what social media does. I get it.
Of course.
Chevrolet, in cooperation with NASCAR, unveiled a new test bed vehicle. It is the Blazer EVR prototype. This is, in other words, an all-electric Chevrolet Blazer in race trim.
SUV.
Yes. Which NASCAR does not use in competition. Keep that in mind. Chevrolet said they're going to continue testing and learning about the technology as it is and what might be able to be done to improve it. Claims the EV puts out about the equivalent of 1,300 horsepower through 3 6-phase electric motors, all powered by 78 kilowatt per hour liquid-cooled battery. And again, because the internet is the internet and it tends to blow these things up, and you get a whole lot of people that are sitting there saying, if NASCAR ever goes to this, I'm done.
Yeah.
Settle down.
Yep.
NASCAR's not going away from what we're seeing in the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series anytime too soon. If, and I do strenuously use the word if, they do decide to use this and Ford's Mach-E.
I don't think it'll happen.
And no, I don't think this will happen either. But if they do decide to use it, it's going to be in a separate series.
Oh, yeah, here comes the Ford Mach-E, the Chevrolet Blazer, and the Toyota Sienna.
Yeah. It'll be the NASCAR E-Series or whatever you want. I don't care what the heck they call it. But it's not going to be the replacement for the Cup Series. It's not going to replace the Xfinity Series. It's not going to replace the Truck Series. Settle down. Please.
But the fact that they're going this E series is of SUV vehicles.
Sure, why not? You know, we're running pickup trucks, we're running sedans, we're running sports cars. Why not run SUVs? What the heck?
Here's what they're doing. This is they're trying to mimic, and that's the word we'll use. They're mimicking the line of the succession line. Let's call it that. Of how the FIA's do it. Formula 1, Cup. Formula 2, let's say Xfinity.
Okay.
Formula 3, let's call that trucks.
Yeah, we've talked about the possibility of hybrids.
Here's your Formula E right here for Cup or NASCAR.
Yeah.
You can't tell me I'm wrong.
No. I would have a hard time telling you you're wrong, too.
1,300 horsepower?
That's
Let's
kicking.
see that on the high banks of Talladega.
Yeah. Yeah, if they do test this thing out at Talladega, I want to be there. It's kind of like if you ever get an Indycar out there onto Talladega, I want to be there. I want to see that. That'd be fun. Well, here we go again. NASCAR versus 2311 in Front Row Motorsports. That lawsuit continues to be ramped up even in the week before the season begins. The latest filing has NASCAR seeking to reverse the ruling that allowed the two organizations to run as though they have charters. It was granted to the teams just before Christmas. We told you about that here on the show. NASCAR's filing in the Western North Carolina District Court claims that allowing the teams to compete as though they had charters, quote, misuses the judicial power to force NASCAR to treat its litigation adversaries as its business partners and confidants, undermining the mutual trust that has fueled NASCAR's growth and success. Wow, there's a bunch of legalese. Adds that the orders both, quote, flout federal antitrust law and, quote, misapply the established rules governing the use of preliminary injunctions, unquote. NASCAR also drove a little bit more of a wedge between themselves and the two organizations by stating that in the filing, NASCAR, quote, would prefer to extend the perks of the 2025 charter to owners committed to enhancing NASCAR's competitiveness with other sports for fan sponsors and media dollars rather than owners that undermine NASCAR's brand and seek advantages over other owners in charter terms.
Say that 5 times fast.
You're going to honestly tell me that Bob Jenkins of Front Row Motorsports doesn't have NASCAR in mind when he did this. You can't tell me that Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin didn't realize the shortcomings of NASCAR when they did this and made the filing. You can't tell me that.
Well, considering that they are 0-4 with this, the new district that they're in with the new judge, they're 0-4. I don't think they're going to go from batting 0-0-0 to batting probably less than 200.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think that'll happen that quick.
And here's the other problem with this that I'm finding. NASCAR is also claiming that they are not a monopoly in any way because they are up against motorsports series like IndyCar, Formula One, IMSA, the NHRA, and other such organizations.
Right.
Okay, technically, yes, there are other motorsports series, but one of these things is not like the other. There's some similarities, with IMSA and NASCAR. But look at an NHRA car and put it next to a Cup Series car. Take an NHRA funny car.
Right.
Heck, take an NHRA Pro Stock car and put it next to a Cup Series car. Sorry, not seeing a whole lot of similarities there. Last time I looked, IndyCar and Formula One were much more similar to each other than anything related to NASCAR. About the only common things that they got going on are motors and four wheels.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anyway. They also claim that they're in competition with major stick and ball sports like the NFL, Major League Baseball, NHL, NBA. In this case, they're right in seeking the attention of fans, sponsors, and even vying for coverage by broadcast services. But again, all of those leagues, all of these series have one thing in common. They have no direct competitors.
True.
We've seen a competition amongst these series one time when CART and IRL split. That lasted, what, decade-ish?
Close.
And then they got back together because they realized we're stronger together than we are apart. There is no main competitor to NASCAR. Sorry, there's not. There is no other stock car series on this planet that doesn't already have NASCAR in the name. Wheel and Euro Series, Brazil, Mexico, Pinto Series up in Canada. They're all NASCAR related. You can throw out the Cars Tour, but the Cars Tour is all late models. They're not really competing with NASCAR.
Right.
They're a separate tour in and amongst themselves. NASCAR, you have the stock car world to yourself. Mm-hmm. And while I'm no lawyer, and I don't play one on YouTube or on the radio,
right,
I get the feeling that when this gets heard in May, back when NASCAR finally returns to North Carolina for racing, that's probably what the judge is going to say.
Right.
Sorry, you are a monopoly. Who saw this coming? Nobody. Major change at Trackhouse Racing. Rapper Pitbull, who was a partner with Justin Marks really from the time of the team's formation, announced he has ended his partnership effective immediately as of yesterday. He stated on social media, quote, "Over the past 5 years, we've made history by introducing NASCAR to a whole new audience, falling in love with NASCAR fans at the same time. We have made the decision to terminate the partnership with Trackhouse Racing effective immediately. We're looking forward to performing on the sport's biggest stage this Sunday, the Daytona 500. It's a true honor." I'm going to get back to this word here in just a second that he used at the end. He says we. That tells me he and his management team decided to split. Justin Marks put out a statement as well. Justin Marks' statement basically thanks Pitbull for all of his time together. Nobody on either side is talking about why this split occurred the day of the Craftsman Truck Series season opener and the day 2 days before we get to the Daytona 500. And yet he's still performing in the pre-race ceremonies. But nobody knows why.
I think there's a new partner coming in.
We could talk about that.
I think there's a new one coming in.
Let's deal with that. Because if you finish the post on social media that I was reading just a moment ago, where it says it is a true honor, it finishes with a word spelled D-A-L-E.
Dale.
But if you look at it, it could appear like it's Dale, right? If you read it in English, it's Dale. And that was how, when I first looked at it, I initially pronounced it. And then I started looking into this a little bit more and realizing that Pitbull's from Miami. He's Cuban-American. It's probably Dale. And that roughly translates into go for it or do it. But again, no reasons given. I don't know. But yeah, I would imagine, knowing Justin Marks, this isn't the end of this. We're going to hear some pretty big news coming fairly soon about this situation.
Well, considering...
And you may have heard something new. I don't know.
Considering, and I'm lining dots up here.
Yeah.
Considering that there is an awfully large name of a new sponsor that came to Trackhouse not all that long ago, I'm not going to be overly surprised if that little bull gets a little larger.
Yeah, they've been there before.
At the house.
They've been in NASCAR before, and they didn't care for it, but things are changing within the NASCAR world since, almost 20 years ago now. So, yeah, you might be right. We'll see. Kind of good news out of Fox, only a week after selling out all the commercials from the Super Bowl between the Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs at $8 million per 30 seconds. The bargain that is the Daytona 500 has also been sold out at a package of between $400,000 and $500,000 per 30-second time slot. By the way, that didn't just happen this week. The network actually said they sold out all commercial availabilities back in December. It's the earliest they've ever sold out the race in their 20-plus years of coverage of it. And it is the most viewed race of the season here in the United States in any motorsports series, something we dealt with here on the show just a couple of weeks ago. Some of the companies you'll see on the Fox coverage: Chipotle and Chili, Chevrolet and Toyota, Airbnb and Meta. And I say all the commercial availabilities because there are Fox promotional avails, and then there are local commercial breaks that are in there for all the local affiliates all around the country. So that does make a difference, just to let you know. Let's skip down here. Grand Marshal of the race for the Daytona 500, Captain America Brave New World star Anthony Mackie. Of course, you remember him initially as Sam Wilson as Falcon as well, and then he got handed the shield at the end of Avengers Endgame. I watched Brave New World, by the way, on Thursday. It was okay, but man, you can tell that the Russo brothers are not in charge of this film anymore. It is massively inconsistent in its pacing. It's not a bad movie, but it is nowhere near on the level of Captain America, The First Avenger, Winter Soldier, or Civil War. I gave it a 7 out of 10, not to be all Entertainment Roundtable. With Mackie as the Grand Marshal set to give the command to start engines, also as a part of a promotion, Alan Ritchson, who plays Jack Reacher in the Amazon Prime series that's set to debut its third season coming up later this week, is doing some promotion as the honorary pace car driver. This dude is at least my height, maybe a touch higher, 6'4" to 6'5", weighs 250 pounds, all of it muscle. And he's going to cram himself into a NASCAR pace car. There's hope. There's hope. I might be able to do it.
Yeah.
Not that they're going to call me, just saying. DGM Racing and Jesse Iwuji Motorsports in the Xfinity Series have formed a strategic alliance. This should help Jesse Iwuji Motorsports and the former U.S. Naval officer, well, I guess current still U.S. Naval officer and NASCAR driver with this fledgling organization. You might remember we talked about this some years ago. If you're a longtime listener, Iwuji teamed up with Pro Football Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith and started this team in 2021. They were full-time 2021 and 2022, but the past couple of years, they were part-time. We just kind of rarely saw them or heard about them. They want to return to full-time action this year, and in the partnership with DGM, that'll be 2 full-time, 1 part-time entry. Right now, we're looking at the 71 for Ryan Ellis, the 91 to be driven by Josh Bilicki, and CJ McLaughlin going to be in the number 92. Can expect more announcements about upcoming race plans, sponsor announcements, and future drivers to be coming along at some point in time soon. Let's take a break here. When we come back, got one bit of big news here. Actually, a couple of things from the Craftsman Truck Series, even after last night. And the reason why we're rushing through this, again, we found out right as we went on the air that we're going to be shortened from 2 hours to 1 hour. Things that would have been nice to have learned yesterday, 2 days ago. I don't know. Let's just say if Grady Sapp's listening, you're going to get a phone call.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network.
Don't.
fuel only. Go, go, go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
All right, talking a little truck series here. We might have a little bit more time. We've been told 9:10, 9:15. So we'll make the run from here to the end of the show whenever the end of the show comes along. Big last-minute change at Nice Motorsports, too. If you've watched this week's Crossed Flags, which I'll go ahead and let you know right now, normally Matt and I do predictions. And we did this year as well for the Truck Series, Xfinity Series, Formula One, IndyCar, and the Cup Series. We did Rookie of the Year, we did Champion, and we did our bold prediction for each of those series. It's all in Crossed Flags. We're not going to do it here on this show. Go back and check it out. But if you did check it out, we did tease this bit of a change here and told you we would give you the details on the big show, which is this. Nice Motorsports announced that Christian Rose, who was initially set to run full-time this year in the number 44 Chevrolet Silverado, is shifting to a part-time role. He's going to split seat time with Bailey Curry. Curry actually raced last night in the Daytona 500. The problem is that Rose's sponsorship backing has changed for the worse. He's going to still remain as a driver on Nice's roster, but he will, well, we just don't know exactly when he's going to get into the truck. Curry brings more to the table. Mass Doweltech stepped up, back to Curry in last night's race.
And had a shot to win.
Yes, he did. And Christian Rose is a highly touted driver. I will say this, and I mean, I've heard a lot about him. I guess I should put it that way. Not necessarily highly touted, but I've heard a lot about him. That basically submarines his bid for Rookie of the Year because he was one of the ones on that list.
Unfortunately.
Let's see. And then we're going to get a new truck team. Part-time, but a new truck team. Japanese native Akinori Ogata has a love for NASCAR and has such moved from his native Japan to North Carolina and started his own Craftsman Truck Series team. They will run, maybe not surprisingly, Toyota Tundras. They'll sport the number 63. Sponsorship coming from Kiowa, Industrial, Moon Eyes, YKK AP, and others. This year, they're going to be a part-time team. The first race set for next weekend at Atlanta. More races to be announced soon. When they get to road courses, the team has announced that a road course ace by the name of Kenko Miura is going to be behind the wheel. Expect Ogata to drive most, if not all, of the oval track races that the team will enter this year. Ogata does have 25 starts to his credit in NASCAR. His best finish coming in Atlanta, where he finished 17th.
A lot of Asian-based companies, which that's good. They're good to get in. Good to have Asian-based companies coming into the market.
Yeah, not a bad thing at all. Not a bad thing at all. McLaren, as we turn our attention over to Formula One, they made a smart move. They are locking in the people that have gotten them to the top or back to the top of the Formula One world. They renewed the contract of their technical chief, Peter Prodromou. He came on board with the team back in 2023 as their technical director of aerodynamics, wasted very little time in making an impact, helped the team get the 2024 Constructors' Cup title. This, by the way, is his second go-round with McLaren. Initially, he was with them back in 1991 as part of the design team, and then worked his way up to chief aerodynamicist before he left and moved into a similar role at a little company you've probably heard of, Red Bull. You know what they did with Sebastian Vettel. 4 straight driver and Constructors' Cup titles. He then rejoined McLaren back in 2014 as their chief engineer. You know, right about the same time that Red Bull stopped winning all those things in favor of Mercedes. It's the latest contract extension by McLaren in the wake of their return to title-winning ways. They inked long-term deals with both of their drivers, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, and their team principal, Andrea Stella, is also locked into a long-term deal. I will say this, though. Contracts are an interesting thing because, let's face it, there's always clauses in there that allow you to buy them out or fire them for particular purposes. So, you know, it's only worth so much. But while you're driving and or working properly, enjoy it. The incoming Cadillac F1 entry may end up having more in common with the Haas F1 team than we initially thought. Cadillac, as we reported here on this show not that long ago, made a deal with Ferrari to source the powertrain, the engine, the hybrid system, and the gearboxes. After that, it was initially thought the Cadillac was going to be working up everything else, body, suspension, chassis, and all that kind of stuff, really only getting said powertrains from Scuderia Ferrari. Motorsport.com is reporting, turns out it might be a little bit more on Ferrari. Cadillac might be returning to them for the suspension as well. for the cars that come in 2026. Neither Cadillac nor Ferrari are talking about it right now on the record, but it would allow the team to allocate resources to other areas for their first year. I don't know. We'll see. Also, we got a pretty decent change for Williams here. They got a new title sponsor. It's a company called Atlassian, Atlassian. It's it's a big enough investment, it makes them a title sponsor. It's the Atlassian Williams racing team. We're just going to call him Williams. I'm sorry. Atlassian is based in Australia. It's a tech company specializing in software related to IT and team collaboration efforts. The company's logo will feature prominently on the driver's fire suits for Alex Albon, newcomer Carlos Sainz, as well as on the 2025 racers that officially will be unveiled this week in London, Tuesday, I think, at the official 2025 car reveal show at the O2 Arena. Now, this is a major infusion of money for the former F1 frontrunners who have 114 wins and 9 Constructors' Cup titles in their history. But let's face it, really, since you and I have been covering Formula One, they've been bottom feeders. So this can't hurt. Also, it's kind of strange. A couple of teams showed off cars, Williams being one of them. But the thing about it is this isn't the final look. So we're going to show you these pictures as John works them up on CRN Live on YouTube. I know I'm jumping around on him and making him work really hard because, well, again, time frame. But McLaren and Williams took the wraps off the racers for this coming year, and the body's right. So looking at the shape of the body from the front wing to the back wing, that's what it's going to look like. But the overall look, the livery, paint scheme, if you will, not final. Why? Because all the teams, again, agreed to show off the look at the 2025 racers at that expo at the O2 Arena in London. So they couldn't show off the final actual look, wrap of the car. So the bodies are right. Paint scheme, not the final version. We'll show as many of those off next weekend here on the show, assuming we don't get shortened. Just saying. A German court has found a trio. Don't mess with the Schumachers. This is what this lesson is. I'm just going to say it right now. I'm not even going to bury the lead.
Yeah.
Don't mess with the Schumacher family. German court found a trio guilty of attempted blackmail in a case involving the legend, F1 champion Michael Schumacher. None of the guilty trio were named. The ringleader, identified as a 53-year-old man who roped his son into the plot. After the verdict was handed down, the sentence quickly followed. 3 years in prison for the 53-year-old man. The son, the third guy, he's an interesting case. They were handed suspended sentences and probation. In other words, keep your noses clean for 3 years, and this goes away. You mess up just one time, in the next 3 years, you're going to jail. As we've noted on this show, Schumacher's not been seen in public since that serious brain injury he suffered on a ski trip back in December of 2013. The family's been very vigilant about his privacy, to the point where they sued and won a suit against a German publication that published a supposed interview with Schumacher, which turned out to be AI generated. Not a smart move. The blackmailing trio were found guilty of using the threat of releasing private home videos and family photos of Schumacher and the family, seeking big money in return. When the Schumacher family alerted authorities, the sting was set up to corner the trio, who were then arrested. That third man, by the way, a former security firm employee who was assigned to the Schumacher home and got fired. That's how apparently they got the photos and the videos. Why in the world? Because I get the blackmail side of things.
Right.
Why isn't that considered theft?
Good question.
How in the world did he get a suspended sentence? To me, of all the three of them, that's the guy who should be in jail.
True.
Because he took their property.
True.
I'm just throwing it out there. Were you watching the approximately 400 or so hours of pregame coverage on last Sunday's Super Bowl 59? If so, you might have caught the latest trailer for Brad Pitt's upcoming F1 film. Directed, as we've talked about here on the show, by Top Gun Maverick director Joseph Kosinski and produced by Jerry Bruckheimer of Top Gun and Days of Thunder fame. Pitt stars as F1 driver Sonny Hayes. He's been out of the series for a time, but he's been called back to mentor a rookie teammate by the name of Joshua Pierce. He's portrayed by Damson Idris for this fictional team, the APX Grand Prix organization. Apple Original Films had originally set this to be released only through the streaming service Apple Plus. And then production costs jacked up. So they changed tactics, and the film will get a theatrical release. IMAX edition and everything else is going to be here in the United States June 27th. If you are overseas, Athena on CRN Live on YouTube, you can get it 2 days earlier. Congratulations. Formula One granted unprecedented access to the crew, gave them garage area, allowed them to put camera cars on the track during certain times in practice sessions, and numerous races over the last couple of years, too. Got a whole lot of unprecedented coverage. It'll feature all 10 teams currently racing in the series, and most, if not all, of the drivers. Others that will star in this movie: Javier Bardem, Kerry Condon, Tobias Menzies, Sarah Niles. It's just the latest teaser, by the way. The first was released last year, the weekend of the British Grand Prix. Filming basically ran all the way up through the end of the 2024 season. Post-production final editing underway. If you missed the trailer, you'll want to see it. Go to Formula1.com and look in the latest section. Check it out there. Over to IndyCar here, and big changes continue over there. And it's amazing to me how many things are changing right as we'll get to this in Formula E in a minute, in the middle of the season, or right as we're on the doorstep to get into the 2025 season.
Right.
We noted last week Tim Cindric was backing off of his role at Team Penske, where he basically oversaw all of the racing arms at the famed organization. This year, he's concentrating really only on the IndyCar arm. Now we get a big change at the top of Penske Entertainment as a whole. Jay Fry, president of IndyCar, gone. Leaves the company after a decade as president. He's being replaced by Doug Bowles, takes over as the president of IndyCar from his prior role as president of Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Bowles has been the president of IMS since 2013. He oversaw the 100th edition of the Indy 500, the doubleheader NASCAR IndyCar weekends from earlier on in this decade. Was lucky enough to be at the first one in 2021. It was really cool. Renewed interest in the series as it tries to get back to where it was in the 1980s, before the 1980s, I should say, where it was the top motorsport in the United States. Yes, it was more popular than NASCAR back in the 70s and 60s. Penske Entertainment and CEO Mark Miles, with whom Bowles will report directly to, said this, quote, "Doug is the ideal choice to lead both IndyCar and IMS as we enter into a new era of opportunity and visibility. He's an exceptional leader and motivator who's appreciated by our fans, respected by our owners, drivers, partners, and additional key stakeholders." Okay, it all sounds nice. In the press conference officially announcing Bowles as the new president of IndyCar, he revealed that Jay Fry was fired. But he didn't answer directly why. Here is what Miles basically said, quote, "Jay focused more on comp and ops, and that's on the track. So competition and operations, and that's on the track, less on the other commercial aspects of the sport. In IndyCar, Doug is incredibly well suited to work on both." So we would call this a philosophical difference, in other words.
Yeah, sounds like it.
We were wanting you to concentrate more on this, and you concentrated only on this, and because of that, bye.
Yeah.
That's effectively what that turns into.
Yep. Seems like.
Here's the thing. Jay Fry is president of IndyCar. I wouldn't call his term unsuccessful.
Not even close.
So I get the funny feeling Jay Fry is not going to be out of work for too very long.
No. Not at all.
That guy that we were talking about earlier on who, he's going to start the Daytona 500, even though we're questioning whether or not he should, Helio Castroneves. Here's another honor for him, and this is well-deserved. But for me, at least, I don't know about you, Matt, this is a case of, what, he wasn't already in? He is going to be inducted as the sole member of the 2025 class of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hall of Fame.
From what he's accomplished at that racetrack, extremely well-deserved.
Again, wasn't he already in?
What I thought too, but
we kind of thought he was.
Sorry, I'm still not sold on why he should automatically be in the 500 Daytona 500 tomorrow, just because he's
welcome to the world of provisionals.
The world of provisionals that now come out of nowhere when they didn't even exist.
Yeah, I know.
For umpteen years.
I know. I get it. I follow you. Elio Castroneves' resume, in case you're curious, he's one of a select number of drivers to claim 4 Indy 500 wins. He got them in 2001, 2002, 2009, and 2021. He'll be back in a one-off ride this year in this year's race for Meyershank Racing, and he'll continue to try for a record-breaking 5th. Meyershank Racing is who he raced for in 2021 when he won it. I'm not necessarily going to put it out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not.
Nope. IndyCar, well, okay. We here at CRN have created, and you, the listener / viewer on CRN Live on YouTube, feel free to join in. Matt, tell them a little bit about it, where they can find it and all that.
All right. We've got this year on NASCAR.com what we're going to do at the request of several of our YouTube CRN Live viewers. We're going to have a fantasy league that'll go all year. Just look for the league under NASCAR Fantasy Live, CRN Fantasy Live 2025. Get your entry in, get your team going. Let's go have fun.
There you go. Matt and I are both already signed in. There's a few other people that are in there as well. At this point in time, we're not thinking about starting an IndyCar fantasy league. But at some point in time later on, maybe.
Right.
And if IndyCar is more your style and you want to play fantasy, this might be right up your group. Penske Entertainment has contracted with a company called Grid Rival. Might be familiar to those who watch the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona because they sponsored Team Hardpoint's GTD Porsche entry multiple times over the last few years. IndyCar officials released the statement that said that, quote, Grid Rival has distinguished itself in the industry as the only motorsports fantasy platform offering both season-long fantasy leagues and daily fantasy contests where players can win real money, assuming you live in a state where that's legal. The unique combination of long-term strategy and daily challenges provides an experience that caters to every type of IndyCar fan, from seasoned racing strategist to your casual weekend enthusiast. All right, knock yourself out. Hope it works. Again, we might look into it at some point in time if there's a demand for it. And the 2025 IndyCar field is now officially full. All the racers, 29 full-time, hopefully, rides in all, have their drivers. The final holdout was at Dale Coyne Racing in their number 18 Honda-powered entry. They officially filled it yesterday, Friday, as we air live here on a Saturday. The announcement that 5-year veteran IndyCar driver Rinus VeeKay was signed. He'll pair with the rookie Jacob Abel in the number 51. He'll be the mentor as well. Rinus VeeKay, not a surprise that he landed back in IndyCar.
Yeah, that's not a surprise.
He comported himself quite well in a car that was relatively uneven during his time in the series. I mean, I'll admit it. I'm not going to put it all on Rinus VeeKay.
No, because Ed Carpenter ECR is not very well known for their road racing prowess in their teams. They
yeah, that's true.
Known in their prowess of the oval tracks, which, they've always been an automatic threat anytime they unload at Indianapolis for the front row. They're an automatic threat.
Absolutely they are. So congratulations to him, and we'll see whether this does good things for Dale Coyne or not. The good thing here for Dale Coyne is the fact that he's got 2 drivers now this year who are full-time. He doesn't have to sit there and pick and choose drivers and figure out who's going to race from week to week. He's got 2 drivers. They're locked in for the entire season.
Right.
And that kind of stability can only help. Because, I mean, you know this better than I.
Yeah.
If you're a team owner and you start saying, okay, I'm going to drive, but I'm going to put Steve in the car and I'm going to put producer John in the car, now I have to set it up for not only my style of driving, but Steve's got a style of driving that's different from mine. And producer John's style of driving is a bit different from both Steve's and Matt's. So I've got to do all these changes, and there's no stability there.
No, that's why the car should be sponsored by Tylenol or Aleve, because the crew chief's going to have a headache from trying to get 3 different setups for 3 different driving styles.
Or something stronger.
Yeah, for sure.
Just saying, can we get an alcohol sponsor somewhere?
For sure.
To Formula E, Stars investing in motorsports isn't anything new at all. Think Paul Newman, Newman-Haas Racing, not Gene Haas, by the way, just to let you know. That goes back to the 1980s. Got Hal Needham co-owning a Cup Series operation at about that same time. Seems to have become pretty cool again. You got Ryan Reynolds' investment into Alpine and Formula One over the last couple of years. Now you got Idris Elba. Idris Elba is known for his roles in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Heimdall, also was in Star Trek Beyond, and a whole lot more. Part of an investment group that becomes part of the Kiro Race Company, joining in with lead investors David Kaplan and Bennett Rosenthal. Also includes 3 current owners of sports teams around the world, some media insiders as well. So congratulations to them, and hopefully it'll work. Lola, we're going to talk about them later because, good God, they're just absolutely out of their minds. Let's see here. I heard a report, by the way, that, and the reason we're not going deep into this is because ESPN's in their last year of their deal to cover Formula One. I've already heard where ESPN's not going to re-up it, but the source that I heard it from is not necessarily what I call the most reliable of ones, so we're keeping an eye on it. We'll see whether or not this happens. But one more note here, and this does kind of affect the local side of things as well. The motorsports world lost one of its most well-thought-of writers. Ed Hinton passed away recently. Graduate of the University of Southern Mississippi with a degree in journalism, found his calling in covering sports, mostly major sports, over the first course of his career. But he seemed to find his true love when he got assigned to cover motorsports of any kind. He was able to join the Tribune Company shortly after getting out of college. His columns covering sports were carried in well-known newspapers around the country like the Chicago Tribune, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Los Angeles Times, Baltimore Sun, Orlando Sentinel, and South Florida Sun-Sentinel, along with national publications like Newsday and National Sports Daily, before he joined up with ESPN in 2008, where he got assigned to cover motorsports almost exclusively. ESPN.com's motorsports editor, Kaylee Davis, said of Hinton, quote, Ed wasn't just a fine writer. He was a trusted friend. His wife, Snow, was the beacon that drove him to be the best he could be, and his son, Tyler, was the light of his life. He was great under pressure, and in racing, there was always immense pressure there. Most sports writers don't encounter death all that often in their professional lives, but Ed did, and often. He handled it with grace, tenderness, and was always with a determination to answer the question of why. He wasn't always liked, but he was always respected. He was the best of his generation. He was a credit to ESPN. He kept his base in the Southeast, covered well-known names in the sports world like Paul W. Bear Bryant, Bo Jackson, Mickey Mantle, Muhammad Ali, and many others, but decided that in 2014, at the age of 66, he was done. He wrote about his time in the business in his final article on ESPN.com, which was posted on New Year's Eve of 2014, that, quote, most sports writers have grown up on baseball, football, basketball, maybe hockey. So they cover what they know. They played and watched in youth, what they played and watched in youth. I had one more in my background, auto racing, because I'd started going to dirt tracks at the age of 10. Ed Hinton passed away Thursday, a week ago. Brookwood Hospital in Birmingham, Alabama. Ed Hinton, 76 years old. I remember reading many of his articles on ESPN.com and in newspapers. Remember, kids? Ask your grandparents.
Yep.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take off here. We're going to turn things over to the flagship radio station because they've got coverage coming from Daytona as we get prepared for ARCA and Xfinity Series racing today and tomorrow, of course, the Great American Race. You know it as the Daytona 500. So live coverage coming up from them right after we get off the air and get a couple of commercial breaks in. All right? Y'all have a great one. We'll be back with Cross Flags on Wednesday and next Saturday with another edition of The Big Show, which we think is going to be 2 hours. We hope. We'll talk to you Wednesday and next Saturday right here, Cross Flags and CRN. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.